Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, let us take a look into add component annotation. Well, add component annotation indicates that a annotated class is a Spring Bean or a Spring component. Well, add component annotation tells Spring Container to automatically create a Spring Bean. Alright, so in annotation based configuration, we can use add component annotation to tell Spring IOC Container to automatically create a Spring Bean for a particular class. Alright. So basically Spring offers three kind of configuration styles. First one is XML based configuration, second annotation based configuration, third Java based configuration. And this add component annotation is used in annotation based configuration. Alright, perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's understand more about add component annotation with an example. So let me first create a project using Spring Initializer. So go to browser and just type start.spring.io. And here let us fill up the project information and let us download this project and let us import in a IntelliJ IDEA. Well, here we have different types of projects. So let us choose Maven over here and let's keep Java language as selected. And here let us choose Spring Boot version 3.0.2 and here let us fill up the project metadata. Let's give group as net.javaguides. Well, you can give any group that you want. Next, let us give artifact as Spring Annotations. Next, project name is same as artifact. Next, description demo project for Spring and Spring Boot Annotations. Next, let us give package name as net.javaguides.spring annotations. Next, packaging jar and let us select Java version 17. Next, as of now, don't add any dependency because Spring Initializer will add a default dependency. For example, if you go to Explorer and go to pom.xml file and you can able to see here Spring Boot Starter. So this dependency internally add Spring Core dependency. Alright. So as of now, we need a Spring Core dependency to explore Spring Core related annotations. Next, close this and go ahead and click on generate button to generate this project as a zip file. Next, open this zip file in a folder. Next, just unzip this. Alright, next open the IntelliJ IDEA and open this project in IntelliJ IDEA. So click on open and go to the location where your Spring Boot application is present. In my case, it is in downloads folder. Select the project, click on open. Well, this will import Spring Boot project in IntelliJ IDEA. Next, let me demonstrate the usage of add component annotation. Well, add component annotation indicates that the annotated class is a Spring Bean or a Spring component, right? So let us create a class and annotate that class with add component annotation so that Spring IOC Container will create a Spring Bean or a component for that class. Okay, so let's go to project, expand this src folder, go to main package. Within this main package, let's create one more package and let's call it as controller. Within a controller package, let's create a class. Let's give a name as pizza controller. Alright, next within this pizza controller, let's create a simple method public. Let us give string as a return type and let's give method name as get pizza. Next, this method returns some dummy string. Let us say hot pizza. Perfect. Next, we want to make this class as a Spring Bean or a Spring component. So let us go ahead and let us annotate this class with add component annotation. Well, this add component annotation tells Spring IOC Container to automatically create the Spring Bean for this class and manage that Spring Bean. We don't have to create object of this class manually using new keyword. Spring Container takes a control to automatically create the Spring Bean and manage that Spring Bean for us. Alright, so Spring IOC Container is also called inversion of control, right? Because Spring Container takes a control to automatically create the objects and manage those objects for us. Next, let us go ahead and let us test this change. Well, in order to test this change, we will create an instance of Spring IOC Container and then we'll retrieve this pizza controller Spring Bean from the Spring Container and then we'll call its get pizza method, and this get pizza method returns hot pizza dummy string. Alright, so let's go to main 80 class over here and go to main method, and within main method we have a run method called. So this run method returns the application context object. Well, basically application context acts as a Spring IOC container, right? And the pizza controller Spring Bean is already there in a Spring IOC container. So let us go ahead and let us retrieve the pizza controller Spring Bean from the IOC container. So here let's have a Java 10 var type, and then let's give variable name context. So this is basically a configurable application context object. So this object provides getBean method to get the particular bean from the IOC container. Alright, so here context, it has getBean method, and notice here there are multiple overloaded getBean methods. We can use appropriate method to get the Spring Bean. Now let's use this second getBean method. It takes class type, okay, and just pass pizza controller as a class type here. And next let us take the result of this getBean method in a pizza controller variable. Perfect. Next let us type system.out.println. So here is a shortcut, just type sysout and hit enter. So IntelliJ IDEA will give sysout statement, and then pizza controller, it has a get pizza method. Okay, now we have retrieved pizza controller Spring Bean from the Spring IOC container using getBean method. Next let us run this program, and there we go. You can able to see hot pizza is printed in a console. It means the class which we have annotated with add component annotation is working as expected. Alright, so Spring IOC container created the object of this pizza controller class, and it managed that object, and we have retrieved that object by using getBean method over here. Well, one more important point is, by default Spring container will give name to the Spring Bean as a class name, but the first letter of the class name in a lowercase. Okay, and we can also explicitly give a name to the Spring Bean by passing value to this add component annotation. For example, let's say we want to give a bean name pizza demo. So this is the Spring Bean name for this Spring Bean. Next we can retrieve Spring Bean by using this name. For example, let me copy this bean name and go to main point class, go to main method, and here we have used class type to get the bean. Now let us use bean name to get the bean. Next we need to provide a casting. Alright, next let us run the program, and there we go. It is working as expected. Alright, so this is how we can get the Spring Bean by using bean name as well. And by default, if we don't specify the bean name, then Spring IOC container will provide a default name to this bean name as a class name, but the first letter of the class name is in lowercase. For example, here let me remove this bean name and go to again main method, and here let me pass the default bean name, that is pizza controller, and look at here the first letter in a lowercase, right? So here let me run the program, and there we go. This is working as expected. Well, in real-time project we use add component annotation to tell Spring IOC container to automatically create the Spring Bean and manage the Spring Bean for a particular class. We don't have to create the object of that class manually using new keyword. Alright, so Spring IOC container takes care of creating and managing the objects of the class for us. Alright, and whenever we required the Spring Bean, then we can simply use Autowired annotation to inject that Spring Bean, and we can use that Spring Bean. Well, we'll see how to use Autowired annotation to inject the Spring Beans as a dependency in upcoming videos. Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, let us take a look into Autowired annotation. Well, Autowired annotation is used to inject the bean automatically. The Autowired annotation is used in a constructor injection, setter injection, as well as in a field injection. Well, in case of annotation based configuration, we use Autowired annotation to automatically inject the Spring Bean. Next, let us go and let us learn more about Autowired annotation with an example. So let's go to our project in IntelliJ IDEA, and notice here in previous video we have used add component annotation to tell Spring container to automatically create the Spring Bean and manage the Spring Bean for this pizza controller class. Next, what we'll do, we'll see how to use Autowired annotation to inject the Spring Bean automatically. So in order to demonstrate this, let me create one more class. So go to base package and within that let's create one more package. Let's call it as service. Within a service package, let me create a class and let's call it as veg pizza. Alright, within this veg pizza class, let's quickly create one method. Let's say public string, and let's give method name as get pizza, and let us return some dummy string, and let us say veg pizza. Perfect. And in order to make this class as a Spring Bean or a Spring component, we can annotate this class with add component annotation. Alright, next what we'll do, we'll see how to use add annotation to inject this veg pizza Spring Bean in a pizza controller class. So go to pizza controller. Within this pizza controller, let us inject veg pizza dependency or a Spring Bean. So for that, let's first create the instance variable of veg pizza class. Well, Autowired annotation is used to inject the Spring Bean using constructor injection, setter injection, and field injection, right? So let us first see how to use Autowired annotation to inject the Spring Bean using constructor injection. So here let us create the constructor public pizza controller, and then let us pass this veg pizza variable as a argument, and then this dot veg pizza equal to veg pizza. Next, go to this get pizza method, and here let us remove this hard-coded value, and here let us call veg pizza dot get pizza. Perfect. Next, let us use add annotation to automatically inject the veg pizza Spring Bean in a pizza controller. So in order to do that, let's annotate this constructor with add annotation. Okay. So this add annotation tells Spring container to automatically inject the veg pizza bean using this constructor. Okay, perfect. Next, let us go to main method and let us test this change. So here, let us go and let's run the program. And notice here the output veg pizza. Well, if you look at the flow, go to pizza controller. Within pizza controller, we have injected veg pizza Spring Bean using constructor, and within this get pizza method we are calling veg pizza dot get pizza method, and this get pizza method of veg pizza object returns veg pizza, and this is the veg pizza is printed over here. Alright, it means we have successfully injected the veg pizza Spring Bean in a pizza controller using add annotation. Next, let us see how to use add annotation with setter injection. So here let me comment out this, and let me quickly create a setter method. Alright, and let us annotate this setter method with Autowired annotation. Now this Autowired annotation tells Spring container to inject this veg pizza Spring Bean as a dependency using this setter method. Alright, next let us test this change. So go to main method. From here let us run the program, and there we go. You can able to see veg pizza is printed in a console. Alright, so this is how we can use Autowired annotation to tell Spring container to automatically inject the veg pizza Spring Bean as a dependency using this setter injection. Next, let us see how to use Autowired annotation to inject the dependency using field injection. So here let me comment out this and go to field, and let's annotate this field with Autowired annotation. Okay, perfect. Next, go to main method, and here let me run the application, and there we go, veg pizza is printed. Alright, so this is how we can use Autowired annotation to automatically inject the Spring Bean as a dependency using constructor injection, setter injection, and field injection. Alright, so this is all about Autowired annotation. Alright, great. I will see you in the next video. Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, let us take a look into add qualifier annotation. Well, add qualifier annotation is used in a conjunction with Autowired annotation to avoid confusion when we have two or more Spring Beans configured for the same type. Well, let me write some code to demonstrate the usage of add qualifier annotation so that you will understand better. So let me go to project in IntelliJ IDEA, and here let me quickly create one interface in a service package. So within a service package, let's create an interface, and let's give a name as pizza, and within a pizza interface let's quickly create a method. So let's give a return type as string, and let's give method name as get pizza. Next, go to Veg Pizza class and let us implement this interface. So go to Veg Pizza class and implements pizza interface and override get pizza method and provide the implementation. So we have already implemented get pizza method. So let's annotate this method with @Autowired annotation. Next, let us create one more class named non-veg pizza and that class implements this pizza interface. So go to service package and let's create a new class. Let's give name as non-veg pizza and this class implements pizza interface and provide implementation for its methods. So just mouse over in this class, click on implement methods and select the method that you want to implement and click on OK. Alright, perfect. And go to get pizza method and provide the implementation. So here go to return statement and instead of returning null, let us return non-veg pizza. Perfect. Next, let's annotate this class with add component annotation so that Spring Container can automatically create a Spring Bean and manage that Spring Bean for this class. Next, in a pizza controller, to achieve loose coupling, we'll inject the interface and we'll pass the implementation dynamically. Alright, so here let me avoid build injection and let me use constructor injection over here, and instead of injecting the class, let us inject the interface to achieve the loose coupling. So here pizza interface and go to constructor and here pass pizza interface as an argument, and here let us remove this and this dot pizza equal to pizza. Perfect. And here let us remove the reference variable and let us give reference variable pizza. Now we have injected the dependency using pizza interface. Well, Spring team basically recommended to use interface for dependency injection because this will achieve the loose coupling. Alright, and if we can look at the constructor over here, this constructor takes pizza interface as an argument, isn't it? And this pizza interface has a multiple implementations like veg pizza and non-veg pizza. So Spring IOC container will get confused like which pizza interface implementation they have to inject using this constructor because there are multiple implementations of pizza interface, isn't it? So in order to avoid this confusion or ambiguity, we can use add qualifier annotation. For example, go to this constructor and go to this pizza interface over here and let us use add qualifier annotation and let us pass the bean name here. Let us say we want to inject veg pizza bean by using this constructor, then we can simply pass this veg pizza bean name. So by default, Spring IOC container will give bean name to this veg pizza Spring Bean as a class name, but the first letter in a lowercase, right? So veg pizza. Okay, now this add qualifier annotation tells Spring IOC container to inject this veg pizza Spring Bean using this constructor. Okay, perfect. Next, let us test this change. So go to main method and let us run the program. And there we go. You can able to see veg pizza is printed in a console because we have injected veg pizza Spring Bean in a pizza controller by using add qualifier annotation. So here basically we told explicitly Spring IOC container to inject veg pizza Spring Bean. Next, if you want to inject non-veg pizza Spring Bean, then we can simply pass non-veg pizza Spring Bean name here. For example, non-veg pizza. So this is the name for the Spring Bean. Next, let us test this change. So go to main method. From here, let us run the application. And there we go. In a console, you can able to see non-veg pizza string is printed because we have told Spring container to inject non-veg pizza Spring Bean in a pizza controller by using add qualifier annotation. Alright, so this is how we can use add qualifier annotation to tell Spring IOC container to inject a specific Spring Bean. Okay, so basically Spring IOC container gets confused like which pizza interface implementation it have to inject because this pizza interface has a multiple implementations, isn't it? So in order to avoid that confusion, we have used add qualifier annotation. Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, let us take a look into add primary annotation. Well, we use add primary annotation to give higher preference to a bean when there are multiple Spring Beans of the same type. Well, let us understand add primary annotation with an example. So go to our project in IntelliJ IDEA, and here we have a veg pizza and non-veg pizza classes. These classes implements pizza interface. Well, in previous video we have seen the usage of add qualifier annotation, isn't it? So if there are two or more Spring Beans configured for the same type, then Spring IOC container gets confused like which Spring Bean it have to inject, isn't it? So in order to avoid this confusion or ambiguity, we have used add qualifier annotation. So alternative to this add qualifier annotation, we can use add primary annotation as well. Alright, for example here, let me remove this add qualifier annotation and let us see how to use add primary annotation. Well, let us say the pizza controller want veg pizza Spring Bean as a dependency. Then we can go ahead and annotate this veg pizza class with add primary annotation. Well, this add primary annotation tells Spring IOC container to give higher preferences for this Spring Bean while injecting the dependency. For example, if you go to pizza controller, within this pizza controller we are injecting the dependency using this constructor, and notice here we have passed the pizza interface as a parameter to this constructor, and while injecting the dependency, Spring container gets confused like which implementation of this pizza interface it have to inject using this constructor. So to avoid this confusion or ambiguity, we can annotate one of the Spring Bean using add primary annotation so that Spring IOC container will give higher preferences for this Spring Bean while injecting the dependency. Alright, now we have annotated veg pizza class with add primary annotation. So Spring IOC container will inject this veg pizza Spring Bean in a pizza controller. Next, let us go ahead and let us test this change. So go to main method. From here, run the application, and notice here in a console veg pizza is printed because we have used add primary annotation to tell Spring IOC container to give higher preferences for this Spring Bean and inject this Spring Bean in a pizza controller, isn't it? Next, let us say you want to inject non-veg pizza Spring Bean in a pizza controller. Then you can go ahead and annotate this non-veg pizza class with add primary annotation. Next, go to veg pizza and remove add primary annotation from veg pizza class. Now this add primary annotation tells Spring container to give higher preferences for this Spring Bean while injecting the dependency. For example, if you go to pizza controller, here we are injecting the dependency using constructor, right? So now Spring IOC container will inject non-veg pizza Spring Bean using this constructor. Alright, so let us test this change as well. So go to main method. From here, run the application, and notice here non-veg pizza is printed in a console. Alright, so this is how we can use add primary annotation to give higher preferences for a Spring Bean whenever we have multiple Spring Beans for the same type. Alright, great. I will see you in the next video. Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, let us take a look into @bin annotation. Well, @bin annotation indicates that a method produces a bean to be managed by Spring container. The @bin annotation is usually declared in a configuration class to create Spring Bean definitions. So let's go ahead and let's see how we can use @bin annotation with an example. So let's go to IntelliJ IDEA and go to our project, and so far we have used annotation based configuration, like we have used add component annotation, we have used add primary annotation, and we have used add Autowired annotation. Alright, so far we have used annotation based configuration. Next, this @bin annotation is used in a Java based configuration, and in order to use @bin annotation we have to create a configuration class. So here let me quickly create one more package, and let me call it as config, and within a config package let's create a class. Let's call it as app config, and in order to make this class as a configuration class we have to annotate this class with add configuration annotation. Well, whenever we annotate a class with add configuration annotation, then this class becomes a configuration class, and within this configuration class we can define a Spring Bean definitions using @bin annotation. Alright, now let me first remove the annotation based configuration for one of the class. For example, here let me go to veg pizza class, and here we have used add component annotation to tell Spring IOC container to automatically create a Spring Bean for this class, right? Now we need to use @bin annotation to explicitly create a Spring Bean for this veg pizza class, and then we tell Spring Container to manage that Spring Bean. Okay, so here what I will do, I will remove this add component annotation. Next, let us see how to use @bean annotation to create a Spring Bean for this class. So go to app config class over here. So this is the configuration class. Within this class we can create a Spring Bean definitions by using @bean annotation. Alright, so here just create a method public, and then let's view return type as pizza. So pizza is the interface and veg pizza is the implementation of this pizza interface. And next let us give method name veg pizza. Next return the object of veg pizza. Now we have created a method. It returns the object of veg pizza class. Next we need to tell Spring IOC container to manage this veg pizza object, right? So in order to do that, we can annotate this method with @bean annotation. Now this @bean annotation tells Spring IOC container to manage the object of this veg pizza class. Alright, and if you can closely observe this code, we are explicitly creating the object of veg pizza class, and we are telling Spring container to manage this object. Okay, but in case of annotation based configuration, we have used add component annotation. So this add component annotation tells Spring IOC container to automatically create the Spring Bean for this class. Okay, we haven't created the object of this class using new keyword in case of annotation based configuration, but in case of Java based configuration, we are using new keyword to create object of this veg pizza class, and we are telling Spring container to manage this object. Okay, so I hope you understood the difference between annotation based configuration and Java based configuration. Now the Spring IOC container is managing the object of this veg pizza class, right? Next let us see how to retrieve this veg pizza object from the Spring IOC container. So go to main method over here, and here we have a application context object. So application context is nothing but a Spring IOC container. We can retrieve Spring Bean from the IOC container by using getBean method. So here let us call context object. It has getBean method, and then pass veg pizza as a class type. Next veg pizza. Okay, now we got a veg pizza Spring Bean from the Spring IOC container. Next let us put the system.out.println and then call veg pizza object. It has getPizza method. Okay, now for time being let me comment out this code. Alright, so next let us run the program, and there we go, veg pizza is printed in a console. It means we have successfully created a Spring Bean by using @bean annotation. Next, one more important point is, by default Spring container will give a name to this Spring Bean as a method name. Okay, and you can also explicitly provide a name to the Spring Bean by using name attribute of this @bean annotation. For example, here this @bean annotation has name attribute, and we can explicitly give a name to the Spring Bean by using this name attribute. For example, here let me give bean name something like veg pizza bean, and we can retrieve this Spring Bean by using this bean name. For example, let me copy this bean name and let me go to main method over here, and here instead of passing the class type, let us pass the bean name and let us provide the casting. Alright, and let us run the application, and there we go. So this is how we can use bean name to get a Spring Bean from the application context. And by default Spring container will give name to this Spring Bean as a method name. For example, here let me copy this method name and let me remove the bean name that we have provided explicitly, and go to main method and just pass the method name as a bean name, and let us run the application, and there we go, veg pizza is printed. Okay, so by default Spring container will give a name to the Spring Bean as a method name. Next let us see how to inject the dependencies. So here let me create one more Spring Bean, public pizza, and let's give method name as non-veg pizza, and then let us return the object of non-veg pizza class, and let us annotate this method with @bean annotation. Next go to non-veg pizza class and let us remove these two annotations, because we are not using annotation based configuration, we are using Java based configuration, right? So again go back to app config class. Now we have created two Spring Bean definitions by using @bean annotation. Next, go to pizza controller, and here also we have used add component annotation to create a Spring Bean for this pizza controller. Now we need to use @bean annotation, right? So here let me remove add component annotation, and here also let me remove Autowired annotation because we are not going to use annotation based configuration. Okay, next let us go back to app config, and here let's create a Spring Bean for pizza controller. So just type public and then pizza controller as a return type and pizza controller as a method name, and then return an instance of pizza controller, and pizza controller is depends on a pizza. Alright, so pizza can be a veg pizza or non-veg pizza. Let us say we want to inject veg pizza as a dependency in a pizza controller, then we can simply pass this veg pizza method call. So this veg pizza returns object of veg pizza class. So this is how we inject the dependency in a Java based configuration. Next, let us annotate this method with @bean annotation. Alright, so just try to compare the annotation based configuration and Java based configuration. In case of annotation based configuration, we have used Autowired annotation to inject the dependency automatically, but in case of Java based configuration, we have to explicitly provide the dependency to a class. Okay, and then we need to annotate this method with @bean annotation so that Spring container can start managing the object of this pizza controller class. Next, let us go ahead and let us test this change. So let's go to main method over here, and here let me uncomment this pizza controller code, and here let me comment out this veg pizza code. So basically here we have retrieved pizza controller Spring Bean from the application context using bean name. Well, by default Spring container gives bean name as a method name, and this is what we are using over here. Alright, next let us run this program, and notice here veg pizza is printed in a console because we have injected veg pizza class object as a dependency to pizza controller. Okay, next let us say we want to inject non-veg Spring Bean as a dependency to pizza controller, then we can simply change over here. So here instead of veg pizza, let us call non-veg pizza. Perfect. Next let's go to main method and let us test this quickly, and notice here in the console non-veg pizza is printed. So this is how we can inject the dependency in a Java based configuration. Alright, I hope you understood how to use @bean annotation to create the Spring Bean definitions and how to inject the dependencies and how we can give a name to the @bean annotation. Next, by default the bean name is same as method name. We can specify the bean name using name attribute of this @bean annotation. Well, this we have already seen. Next, @bean annotation provides init method and destroy method attributes to perform certain actions before bean initialization or before bean destruction by a container. Well, let us see how we can use init method and destroy method attributes of @bean annotation. So let's go back to our example, and here in a pizza controller, let us use init method and destroy method attributes. So go to @bean annotation over here. It has init method attribute, and here we can pass the value as a method name. For example, let us say we use a method name as init. So this init method will get called before creating or initializing this class object. Next, it has destroy method attribute, and we can pass a value as a method name. So let's give method name as a destroy. So Spring container will call this destroy method before it gets shut down. Okay, now let us define this init and destroy method in a pizza controller class. So go to pizza controller class over here, and here let's create a method named init, and within a init method we can write the initialization logic. For example, here let me simply put the system.out.println, and let me print something like initialization logic. And next let me create one more method, public void and then destroy, and then let me put the system.out.println, and let me print something like destruction logic. So make sure that the init method and destroy method names should be same as the value we have passed to init method and destroy method attributes. Okay, next let us see how this works. So go to main method. From here let us run the program, and notice here in a console initialization logic is printed and destruction logic is also printed. Alright, so this is how we can use init method and destroy method attributes of admin annotation. Well, the best use case of using init method and destroy method attributes of admin annotation is that whenever you have a requirement to insert records in a database table at application startup, then you can use this init method attribute and you can specify the method name. So this method will basically insert the records in a database while application startup. Next, if you have a requirement to destroy or delete those records from the database table while application shutdown, then you can simply use destroy method attribute and you can specify the method. So within this method you can write the logic to delete the records while application shutdown. So this is the best use case using init method and destroy method attributes of admin annotation. Alright, so this is all about admin annotation. Hi everyone, welcome back. In this lecture, let us take a look into stereotype annotations. Well, stereotype annotations are used to create a string beans automatically in an application context. So here application context is nothing but a Spring IOC container. Well, the main stereotype annotation is add component annotation. By using this add component annotation, Spring provides more stereotype meta annotations such as add service, add repository and add controller annotations. The add service annotation is used to create a Spring beans at a service layer. Add repository annotation is used to create a Spring beans for repositories at a DAO layer, and add controller is used to create a Spring beans at a controller layer. Well, in typical Spring based applications, we use 3-layer architecture: controller layer, service layer and DAO layer. So Spring provides 3 stereotype annotations such as add service, add repository, add controller annotation to create a Spring beans with respect to these 3 layers. For example, in a controller layer, we can create a controller classes and we can annotate these controller classes with add controller annotation, so that Spring container will create a Spring beans for these add controller classes. In a service layer, we can create a service classes and we can annotate these service classes with add service annotation, so that Spring container can automatically create a Spring beans for these add service classes. Next, in a DAO layer, we can create a repository classes and we can annotate these classes with add repository annotation, so that Spring container can create a Spring beans for these add repository classes. Well, notice here the diagram. Add component annotation is a main stereotype annotation, and the other annotations like add controller, add service, add repository. So these stereotype annotations are derived from the add component annotation. Okay, derived meaning these add controller, add service, add repository. So these stereotype annotations are specialization of add component annotation. Okay, now let us understand more about these stereotype annotations with example. Let's go to our project in IntelliJ IDEA, and within this project let's create 3 packages. So we have already created a controller package and service package. Let's also create a repository package. So we can give name as repository or DAO. So typically different developers give different naming convention. So here let's give a repository. Okay, now within a controller package, let's create a class and let's give name as my controller. Let's annotate this my controller class with add controller annotation. And notice here you have to choose controller annotation from org.springframework.stereotype package. Alright, within this my controller class, let's quickly create one method, public string. Let's give method name as hello. Next, let us return some dummy data over here. So let us say hello controller. Perfect. So we have created my controller class. Within that class, we have created hello method. It returns hello controller string, and we have annotated this class with add controller annotation. Well, this add controller annotation tells Spring container to automatically create a Spring bean for this my controller class. And if you can go inside this add controller annotation, and notice here this add controller annotation is derived from the add component annotation. Alright, it means this add controller annotation is basically a specialization of this add component annotation. Okay, So let's go back to our controller class and let us test this change. So in order to test this, what we can do is we can get this my controller Spring Bean from the Spring container. So go to main method over here, and here we have already application context. It acts as a Spring IOC container. So let us retrieve my controller Spring Bean from this application context. So here let me comment out this code, and here let's call context dot getBean method and then pass my controller class type. Perfect. Let us take the result of this method in a local variable of type my controller. Perfect. And next let us put the system.out.println statement, and then my controller object, it has hello method. Perfect. Next let us run this program, and notice here hello controller is printed. Okay, so basically if you go to my controller, within a my controller class we have hello method. So this hello method returns hello controller. So this is what printed in a console. It means Spring IOC container automatically created a Spring Bean for this class. Next let us go ahead and let us see how to use add service annotation. So go to service package over here. Within this service package, let's create a class and let's give name as my service. And within this my service class, let's create a method public string, and let's give method name as hello, and let us return some dummy data. Let us say hello service. Next let us annotate this class with add service annotation. Well, if you go inside add service annotation, this add service annotation is derived from the add component annotation. It means the add service annotation is a specialization of add component annotation. Okay, so whenever you create a classes under service package, then make sure that you annotate those classes with add service annotation. Alright, perfect. Next, in order to test this, what we can do is we can retrieve this my service Spring Bean from the Spring container. So go to main method. So here we have a context object, it has a getBean method, and then pass my service as a class type, and let us get the result of this getBean method in a local variable of type my service. Alright, and next let us put the system.out.println statement and then call my service object, it has a hello method. Next let us run the program, and notice here hello service is printed in a console. It means Spring IOC container automatically created a Spring Bean for this my service class. Alright, next let us go ahead and let us see how to use add repository annotation. So go to repository package. Within that, let's create a new class. Let's give class name as my repository, and let's annotate this class with add repository annotation. And notice here you have to choose add repository annotation from org.springframework.stereotype package. Next, within this my repository class, let's quickly create a method public string. Let's use method name as hello, and let us return some string here. Let us say hello repository. Perfect. Next, if you go inside a repository annotation, this repository annotation is derived from the add component annotation. It means repository annotation is a specialization of add component annotation. Well, whenever you have a requirement to create a repository classes under repository package, then make sure that you annotate those classes with add repository annotation. Next, in order to test this, go to main method and retrieve the Spring Bean. So here just call context object, it has getBean method, and then pass my repository class type, and let us get the result of this method in a local variable of type my repository. And next let us put the sysout statement and then my repository dot hello. Perfect. Next let us run the program, and there we go, hello repository is printed in a console. Alright, so this is how we can use these important stereotype annotations based on the layer. Well, in real-time project, we create a controller class. Within a controller class, we write the logic to handle the HTTP request. And in real-time project, we create a service class, and within a service class, we keep all the business logic. And in real-time project, we create a repository class, and within a repository class we keep all the database related logic. Alright, I hope you understood how to use these stereotype annotations to create a Spring Beans automatically with respect to different layers. Alright, great. I will see you in the next video. Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, let us take a look into @lazy annotation. Well, by default, Spring creates all singleton beans eagerly at the startup of application context. It means while starting the application context itself, all the Spring beans are eagerly created. Well, you can also load the Spring Beans lazily by using @lazy annotation. Well, sometime we may have a requirement to load the Spring Beans on demand. In that case, we can use @lazy annotation. Well, @lazy annotation can be used with @configuration annotation or @component annotation or @win annotations. Next, which one is recommended? Well, eager initialization is recommended because all the Spring Beans are created eagerly at the startup of application context, and if there are any possible errors while creating Spring Beans eagerly at the startup of application context, then those errors will be automatically detected and the application should terminate. But in case of lazy initialization, we can get the errors at a runtime, and this should not terminate the application. Okay, so it is always recommended to use eager initialization to avoid and detect all the possible errors immediately rather than at a runtime. Let's learn more about @lazy annotation with an example. So let's go to our project, and here let me quickly create a new package. Let's call it as lazy, and within a lazy package let me create a new class. Let's call it as eager loader. Alright, and within this eager loader class let me create a constructor. Let's say eager loader, and within this constructor let me put the system.out.println. Next, let me print this eager loader class name. So here let me copy this and paste it over here. Next, create a one more class, and let's call it as lazy loader. Perfect. And within this class let's create a constructor lazy loader, and then within this constructor let's have system.out.println statement, and let us print this class name. Perfect. Next, let us annotate this class with @component annotation so that Spring container can automatically create a Spring Bean for this class. Next, go to eager loader class, and this class also annotate with @component annotation. Okay, perfect. Next, if we run this application, then Spring IOC container create the Spring Beans for these two classes eagerly. For example, if you go to main method and if you run this program, and notice here eager loader lazy loader. It means Spring IOC container create the Spring Beans for these classes at a application context startup itself. Now let us see how to use @lazy annotation to load lazy loader class on demand. Okay, so here go to lazy loader class, and let us annotate this class with @lazy annotation. Next, if we run this application, then Spring container don't create the Spring Bean for this class eagerly because we have annotated this class with @lazy annotation. So this @lazy annotation tells Spring container to load the Spring Bean for this class on demand. Okay, so next go to main method, and here let me run the program, and notice here eager loader is printed but the lazy loader is not printed. It means Spring container created the Spring Bean for this eager loader class eagerly at the start of the application context. Next, let us see how to load the Spring Bean lazily. So go to main method. Here let's have a context object. It has a getBean method, and then pass lazy loader as a type, and then let us get the result of this method in a local variable of type lazy loader. Here we are calling getBean method to get Spring Bean for this lazy loader class from the application context, but this application context don't contain the Spring Bean for this lazy loader class, right? So now Spring IOC container will create the Spring Bean for this lazy loader class on demand. Okay, So Spring Container don't create the Spring Bean for this class eagerly at the startup of the application context, because this class is annotated with @lazy annotation, right? So Spring Container will only create a Spring Bean for this class on demand. Okay, now here you can see we are requesting a Spring Bean from the application context. So Spring Container will create Spring Bean for this class. Next, if we run the application, and if you can notice here, lazy loader is printed. It means Spring Container create the Spring Bean for this class, lazily. Lazily means on demand. Whenever we request Spring Bean from the application context, that time only Spring Container create the Spring Bean for that class. Okay, so this is how we can use @lazy annotation to load the Spring Bean lazily. Next, we can use @lazy annotation with @configuration annotation as well as @bin annotation. For example, if you go to app_config class over here, so here you can annotate this class with @lazy annotation. So whenever you annotate this class with @lazy annotation, then all the Spring Beans that we have configured in this class are lazily loaded. Next, we can use @lazy annotation with @bin annotation as well. So here let me remove this and let me annotate this method with @lazy annotation. Now this Spring Bean should be loaded lazily or on demand. Okay, so this is how we can use @lazy annotation to load Spring Beans on demand. Okay, so this is all about @lazy annotation. Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, let us take a look into @scope annotation. Well, the latest version of Spring PMO defines 6 types of scopes: singleton, prototype, request, session, application, and WebSocket. The last 4 scopes such as request, session, application, and WebSocket are available in web-aware application. So in this video, we are going to see how to use @scope annotation to define singleton and prototype bin scopes. Well, @scope annotation is used to define a scope of the Spring Bean. We use @scope annotation to define a scope of the bean that is created using @component annotation or @bin annotation. Well, we are going to use @scope annotation to define singleton scope. Well, here singleton scope means only one instance of the bean is created and shared across the entire application, and this singleton scope is basically a default scope. Alright, so in case of singleton scope, Spring IOC container will create only one instance of that particular bean, and that instance will be shared across the entire application. Okay, next, prototype. Well, in case of prototype scope, a new instance of the bean is created every time it is requested. Well, it doesn't matter how many times you request the Spring Bean, Spring Container will create a new instance for each and every request. But in case of singleton scope, only one instance of the bean is created and it is shared across the entire application. It means it doesn't matter how many times you request a Spring Bean from the application context. So application context will return a same instance of the bean each and every time. Alright, so this is the difference between singleton and prototype scopes. Next, let me write the code and let me demonstrate the usage of singleton and prototype scopes. So let's go to our project in IntelliJ IDEA, and here let me quickly create a new package first. So go to base package, right click new and then choose package. Let's view package name as scope, and within a scope let's quickly create a class. Let's give name as singleton bean. Alright, and within this singleton bean class, let's quickly create a constructor singleton bean, and within this constructor let me put the system.out.println and let me print this class name. Alright, so whenever Spring IOC container will create the bean for this class, then this constructor will get called. Okay, next let us annotate this class with @component annotation so that Spring Container can automatically create a Spring Bean for this class. Next, let's create one more class and let's call it as prototype bean. Alright, within this class let's quickly create a constructor as well, prototype bean, and within this constructor let's have a system.out.println statement, and then let us print the class name. Alright, so whenever Spring IOC container create the spring bean for this class, then this constructor will get called and then this statement will be printed in a console, isn't it? Next, let us annotate this class with add component annotation. Okay, now we have created two classes and we have annotated these two classes with add component annotation. Okay, next what we will do, we will use a scope. So go to singleton bin class, let's annotate this class with add scope annotation and let's pass the scope type. So here let's use value attribute and then pass singleton value. Alright, so instead of passing the hard-coded value, Spring provides a constant. So here let me have a configurable bin factory interface. It has a constant, that is scope singleton, and if you look at here, it has a value singleton. Okay, so instead of passing the singleton hard-coded value, we can use this constant. Okay, perfect. Next, let's go to prototype bin class. Let's annotate this class with add scope annotation and let us pass the value. So let's use configurable bin factory. It has a scope prototype constant and this constant provides a value prototype. Okay, perfect. Next, in order to test the usage of add scope annotation, let's go to main method and let's get the spring beans from the spring IOC container, and then we'll see how spring container will return the spring beans for these two classes. So go to main entry point class, go to main method, and within this main method let me remove this code and let me only keep the context object. So this context object is nothing but a spring container and it contains all the spring beans. Now let us retrieve the singleton and prototype spring beans from this context object. So here let's have a singleton bin object and then context dot get bin and then pass singleton bin class type. Now we have retrieved spring bean upper type singleton bin class. Next, let us retrieve another spring bean upper type singleton bin class. So here let me copy this and let me paste it over here and let me rename this as a singleton bin 1. This is singleton bin 2 and let me paste one more time and let me call it as singleton bin 3. Okay, now we have retrieved 3 spring beans from the application context. Next, let us retrieve the spring bean of type prototype bin class. So here let's have prototype bin class and then context dot get bin method and then pass prototype class type over here. Now we have retrieved prototype bin. Next, let us retrieve the same bin multiple times from the application context. So here let me copy this and paste it here and let's call it as prototype bin 1 and this is prototype bin 2 and let me paste one more time and this is prototype bin 3. Okay, next let's run this program and let's analyze the result. And there we go. Notice here singleton bin is printed only once, but you can see prototype bin is printed 3 times. Well, here let me print the hash code of these objects so that you will understand better. So here let me write the system.out println statement. So just type the shortcut sysout. This will give system.out println and here just call the hash code method of this singleton bin1 object. So this statement will basically print the hash code of this object. Next, here let's have a sysout statement and then singleton bin2 and then call its hash code method. And similarly here let's put the system.out println statement and then call singleton bin3. It has hash code method. And similarly here also let's call sysout and then prototype bin1 dot hash code and then here sysout prototype bin2 dot hash code and here also sysout and then prototype bin3 dot hash code. So here basically we have printed the hash code for these objects so that we can easily understand the object uniqueness. Okay, so hash code basically returns the unique code for each object, isn't it? So here let us run the program again and just notice the hash code over here. So if you can notice the hash code, the same hash code is printed 3 times. Okay, because if you can notice the code over here, we have retrieved 3 objects from the application context, and application context return the same object 3 times. Okay, and if you can notice the hash code, each object has a unique hash code, right? And you can look at the hash code over here. So same hash code is printed 3 times. It means application context created the single object for this class, and whenever we retrieve the same object multiple times, then application context return the same object. That's why you can able to see the same hash code is printed over here. Alright, so it doesn't matter how many times you request the object, application context return the same object. Alright, next you can see the prototype bin objects. So we have retrieved prototype bin object 3 times, and you can see the hash code is different for each and every object. It means application context basically create the new object for each request. That's why you can able to see the hash code is different for each object. Alright, it doesn't matter how many times you request a Spring Bean for a prototype bin class, then application context will create a new instance for each and every request. Alright, so this is how you can see the difference between singleton scope and prototype scope. Well, one more important point is, by default Spring provides singleton scope for each Spring Bean. For example, if you go to singleton bean class over here, and if you don't specify the scope explicitly using add scope annotation, then by default Spring will provide singleton scope for this Spring Bean. Okay, so in order to demonstrate this, let me comment out this add scope annotation statement, and let's go to main method, and here let me run the application again, and if you can notice here the same hash code is printed 3 times. Alright, great. So this is all about add scope annotation.